Jonathan Calder had built a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but he was about to die. But on a quiet Tuesday night in a Chicago hospital room, he didn't ask for a better treatment plan or another specialist. He called for his nurse, the woman who had changed his IV lines and checked his vitals every single shift for 4 months, and he told her he had one final request. What he asked her stopped her cold. Before the diagnosis, Jonathan Calder's life ran like one of his freight routes, precise, efficient, and moving, fast enough that no one could see what was missing. He had built his logistics company from a single leased warehouse on the south side of Chicago into an operation that moved cargo across 32 states. His name was on contracts, on buildings, on the lips of people who wanted something from him. He wore that weight the way other men wore a good suit, like it had always been there, like it had always fit. His wife, Laura, had died 6 years earlier. A car accident on a wet November highway, the kind of event that doesn't give you time to prepare or say the right things. After that, Jonathan didn't slow down, he accelerated. Work became the only structure that made sense to him, and he let it fill everything. The apartment he kept in Lincoln Park was expensive and largely empty. He ate at his desk. He flew to meetings he could have handled over the phone. He kept going because stopping felt dangerous, in a way he never said out loud. The symptoms started small. Fatigue he blamed on travel. A persistent ache, he told himself, was stress. By the time he finally went to see a doctor, it was no longer something that could be explained away. The tests came back. The specialists confirmed what the first results suggested. He was admitted to Mercy General on a Wednesday afternoon in early March, and that was where everything stopped moving. Room 414 on the cardiac and internal medicine floor was not a bad room as hospital rooms go. It had a window that faced west, which meant the light came in warm in the late afternoon. The staff rotated in and out on schedule, efficient, professional, and mostly interchangeable in the way that busy hospital staff tend to be. Emily Carter was not interchangeable. She was 29, and she had been a nurse at Mercy General for 4 years. She was not the kind of person who filled silence with unnecessary talk, and she didn't treat patients like items on a checklist. When she came in to check Jonathan's vitals, she actually looked at him. Not at the chart, not at the IV line, but at his face, the way a person looks at another person when they're genuinely paying attention. Jonathan noticed that in the first week. By the second week, he had started looking forward to her shifts in a way he didn't fully examine. She had a habit of straightening the items on his bedside table without being asked, not intrusively, just quietly setting things back in order. She remembered small things, that he preferred the blinds at half, not fully open, that he didn't like being asked how he was feeling first thing in the morning, before he'd had a chance to wake up properly. She never offered false optimism, and she never talked down to him. In a place that had stripped him of almost everything that defined him outside, she treated him like someone who still had his full self intact. 4 months into his stay, Dr. Marcus Webb called Jonathan in for a consultation that had a different weight to it than the usual check-ins. Webb was a careful man who chose his words like he was selecting tools deliberately without excess. He sat across from Jonathan and laid out the results of the most recent imaging in plain language. The disease had progressed. The treatment was not having the effect they had hoped for. He used the phrase, limited timeline, and then gave Jonathan numbers, not large ones. Jonathan listened without interrupting. He asked 2 or 3 clarifying questions, the kind a man asks when he's trying to stay logical, because logic is the only thing holding the structure together. Then he thanked Webb, and Webb left, and Jonathan sat alone in the room for a long time, looking at the window. He had expected to feel fear. What he felt instead was something closer to clarity, a cold, flat understanding of what was coming, and beneath it a slow-building anger that had nothing to do with the disease itself. The calls started that same evening. By the next morning, Richard had arrived. Jonathan's older brother walked into room 414, wearing a coat that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and carrying the specific kind of concern that has nothing behind it. He sat in the chair beside the bed and said the appropriate things, how sorry he was, how unfair this all was, how Jonathan needed to know that family was going to be there for him. He said all of it with the fluency of a man who had rehearsed it in the car on the way over. Richard's wife Diane arrived 2 days later. She was warmer in her delivery, but no less purposeful. She brought flowers Jonathan hadn't asked for and talked about the importance of getting Jonathan's affairs in order. A phrase she used more than once with a delicacy that was not actually delicate. She mentioned the company twice in the first conversation, once to say how impressive Jonathan had built it, and once to mention, as if offhandedly, that Richard had always admired the way Jonathan had structured the ownership. Other relatives followed. Cousins Jonathan hadn't spoken to in years. A family friend who had done legal work for the company once a long time ago. They came in ones and twos, and they all had the same quality to them, a hovering attentiveness that had nothing to do with Jonathan, and everything to do with what Jonathan represented. He watched them come and go from his bed, and the anger that had started the night Webb gave him his numbers grew steadily into something harder and more certain. He had spent his adult life building something real, and the moment the people around him believed he was dying, they had started circling it, like it was already abandoned. Emily was working the night shift on a Tuesday when Jonathan called her in. It was late, well past midnight, and the floor was quiet. She had checked on him an hour earlier and found him awake, which wasn't unusual. He slept badly on the best nights, and barely at all now. When she came back in response to the call light, he was sitting up in bed with the lamp on, and his expression had the particular stillness of a man who had made a decision he was not going to walk back from. Emily set down the chart she was carrying and looked at him. Something wrong. "I need to talk to you about something," he said. "And I need you to hear the whole thing before you respond." She pulled the chair to the bedside and sat down. She had learned early on that Jonathan Calder was not a man who said things for no reason, and when he wanted to talk, the best thing she could do was be still and let him. He started by telling her what she already knew, that the prognosis had changed, that the timeline Webb had given him was short. He said it plainly, without the performance of grief that some patients used when they talked about their own deaths. Then he told her about his family. He didn't editorialize much. He described what had happened since the news came out, who had shown up, what they had said, the conversations about the company, and the assets, and the structure of his estate. He told her that he had a will, but that a will could be contested, and that the people now circling his life had both the resources and the motivation to do exactly that. Emily listened without interrupting. The room was quiet enough that she could hear the ventilation system in the ceiling. Jonathan looked at her directly. "I want to change who inherits everything," he said. "And the most straightforward way to do that is to get married." The sentence landed in the room and stayed there. He kept going before she could respond. He told her he was not confused, and he was not acting out of desperation in the way a sick man sometimes acts irrationally. He had thought about it for more than a week. He was not asking her out of loneliness, or because he had developed feelings he expected her to return. He was asking her because she was the one person in his life right now who had given him something real, who had shown up shift after shift and treated him like a human being instead of an account balance. He trusted her in a way he didn't trust anyone currently sitting in his waiting room. "I'm not asking you to love me," he said. "I'm asking you to be the person my life goes to when I'm gone. Someone who won't dismantle what I built and turn it into something I'd be ashamed of." Emily sat with that for a long moment. Her hands were folded in her lap. She looked at the bedside table, at the lamp, at the glass of water, at the small, precise order of objects. She had straightened herself 100 times without thinking about it. When she looked back at him, her expression was not soft, and it was not hardened. It was the face of someone being asked to carry something very heavy and taking the full measure of its weight before answering. "I need time," she said. Jonathan nodded. "I know." She stood, picked up the chart, and walked to the door. Before she stepped out, she looked back at him. Once not with pity, and not with